Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 8th edition of AbilityNet's TechShare Pro. So I'm Amy Lowe, I'm Chief Executive at AbilityNet, and for anybody who hasn't come across AbilityNet before, we're a charity whose vision is a digital world accessible to all, and it's just so overwhelming every year, actually, to be in a room with so many people that share that vision. So thank you so much for those of you that have come here in person and made time in your diaries to spend time together talking about these important themes. Thank you. And likewise, everybody online who are joining us from all corners of the world. I know we've got some late night joiners and some early morning sort of signer-uppers. So thank you very much for making that time for yourself as well. It's a really tough job working in accessibility, and it can feel really quite lonely sometimes. And, you know, that's one of the reasons that AbilityNet put this together in the first place, is to create those opportunities for us to come together, for us to share best practices, also maybe to challenge each other to do more. Sometimes we can get tired. I always feel like I've stuck my fingers in the charger and recharged myself to, you know, get back out there and fight the good fight. So please, do take time, introduce yourself to people you've not met before. Every year we see familiar faces, but we also see new faces, and we want to welcome them into our community. So thank you, HSBC, once again for welcoming us to this amazing venue and hosting this amazing event. We really, really appreciate all that you've done to put this together. And I guess there's two things that I would ask of you whilst you're at TechShare Pro. Firstly, as I say, to support each other, ask each other questions, take away those nuggets to supercharge your program when you go back to your organizations. But secondly, think about the people in your organizations that are not in the room today that you really think need to hear about this stuff. Think about the stories that you're hearing on the stage that you can take back to them, possibly, you know, the miracles of modern technology. All the sessions will be recorded. You might want to send them some excerpts. You might want to share some stories. But, you know, engaging people in the organization that maybe aren't quite on board yet, this is one of the other things that AbilityNet and TechShare Pro want to achieve. So welcome, everybody. Thanks again for being here. And I am going to hand over to our host with the most, Mali Fernando, to welcome you anew. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, good morning, guys. I'm Mali. I head up digital experience and accessibility here at HSBC. For those of you who can't see me, I'm wearing a blue suit, a blue shirt, which is what I was wearing yesterday, which is why I'm looking down. I can't tell you how proud we are to be involved with TechShare Pro. It's a really, you know, it's a highlight for us. And I want to welcome each and every one of you to this event. I hope you have a fantastic couple of days. As Amy said, learning, contributing. We have some of the best people in the world coming to this. And I'm not referring to my team. You know, I mean, you've got people like Hector Minto. We've got the guys at AbilityNet. We've got the BDF here. We've got Chris Patner. I could go on, right? I would spend a little bit of time with each of these people. They are doing amazing things, whatever stage in your journey you're at. Because honestly, I don't think there's a stronger concentration of expertise and people who've done truly remarkable things and are continuing to do remarkable things. I just want to touch on something Amy said. It wasn't in my prepared notes. I was that guy, right? That one guy who wanted to change this bank. And I think a lot of people thought I was crazy, right? And then one day I decided to go, still as a team of one, what's better than being the world's most digitally accessible bank? And I think people just thought I'd lost the plot. I don't know if we've achieved that. Maybe we have. I'll let you guys decide. But I think, the message to all of you who are working in organizations who are asking that question, how do I drive this change? How do I get the buy-in that I need? How do I get the resource to do the right thing? Look to some of the organizations who've already done this. We all kind of started in a similar space, trying to change our organizations, large or small. It can be done. And if there's nothing else, guys, take away the same sense of inspiration and energy that both Amy and I will be from this event. Guys, if there's anything you need, please let us know. I think, Stephen, I don't know if you're around. There wasn't any orange juice this morning. Can we change that tomorrow? Somebody said there wasn't any orange juice. But if there's anything you need to make you feel more welcome, please do let us know. And of course, talk to my team about some of our training on our Accessibility Hub. It's something we give to you, the community, and other organizations with great joy.
Morning, everyone. Actually, half my speech was just taken by Mali yesterday and today. But as Mali said, I'm Jonathan Castleman, and I head up the brand team, of which digital accessibility is one of the parts. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about why that's interesting, probably a little unique in an organization of this size, but also what that means that we can do. It's obviously, as Mali said, it's a pleasure to host TechShare Pro here at our global headquarters. So thank you all for coming and welcome. And as Amy has said, I hope today and tomorrow is a day of sharing, learning, being inspired, and helping us all raise the ceiling for disability and inclusion, so that we are raising the floor by doing that for everybody. And that's part of the programs that we run here. But I'm brand. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our brand and the journey we've been on. So about 3 years ago, we really thought very hard about what's our purpose as an organization globally. We're in 60 countries around the world. We have 44 million customers. We serve an enormous amount of both corporate and personal banking customers everywhere in the world. And we wanted to try to get down to the essence of what we were, which was that our purpose as an organization was about opening up a world of opportunity for our customers, our people, and our clients. And we then wanted to make sure that that just wasn't an internal purpose. Was very popular at the time. It was, during the beginning of COVID, and everyone wanted to find theirs. But actually, we made it our customer promise. And I think that's important, because on every piece of collateral, we're saying to the world, we're setting an expectation that our job is to help them open opportunity wherever they are. And of course, what could be a better sign of that? What could be a better proof point of that than being as inclusive as possible to all our audiences? And that's why digital accessibility is so important for us. We also looked at our brand architecture, and I'll talk a bit about that, and building an enterprise-wide brand. So not a marketing brand, a brand for our people, our customers, our communities, our stakeholders, and our governments. So I said earlier, why the digital accessibility team? It's a technology team. They work across the entire organization. What it's allowed us to do is to elevate that story and to grow the imprint and impact that it's having, both from an organizational point of view. Someone was talking this morning about, I think it was you, Shani, was talking about the motivation for organizations, the staff pride when we do things like this. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But we also talked about why it's important. It's the right thing to do. And in lots of markets, the Middle East and Asia, it's actually a massive competitive advantage and differentiator for us that we are accessible. Huge, and we'll talk about that in a second. But again, as you said, Shani, I love the stats this morning, so excuse me if I get them wrong, but 270 billion of disposable income. 73% of people are touched by people with disability. $1 invested, 99 back. As a bank and a marketeer who has to deal with bankers, those are the sorts of return on investment numbers that make it easy for us to continue to build a case out of the societal bit. But we also know that trust is a massively important element for all brands. It's how you grow brands, particularly in financial services. And trust has two two dimensions for us. One is stability, financial balance sheet, port in a storm, and we've been around for 159 years, and we're known for that. But it also has emotional trust, customer advocacy, customer care. Are we doing the right thing? And we know that we need to keep on building that, and that's one of the core areas that we can now look to do through the digital accessibility team, Living with Brand, and the long-term commitment that Ian and the bank has made to making sure we are the world's most digitally accessible bank. Nothing like a bit of ambition. So there's three things, and then I'm going to finish. Three things that I wanted to say. So when the design team for both digital and analog all sits within my team, and we design to be accessible by design. So we're solving at source, and we do the same with procurement, because we can treat the symptoms, and that's agonizing in organizations like this. But if we can do it at source, then we will make it better. And what we know from design is, and it was also talked about this morning, is this: if we can simplify how we build things, it's better for everybody. You know, the experience that we deliver meets the expectations that we set ourselves. Yeah, we've two films. Jodie was up here. I don't know whether she's still in the room. Yeah, the partnership with Jodie has been fantastic, and the content that we made of her telling her story has been viewed by 13 million people. Yeah, 13 million people, and that's not because it's just because it's a really inspiring story. Yeah, and in Hong Kong, where it is, you know, they are further behind on the journey in Asia in lots of, from a regulatory and a societal point of view, our team have used a disabled customer in their films about customer advocacy, which ran on mainstream TV during the Olympics. It's brave of them to do it. It's also a cultural first. It's not normal to see that on TV in Asia. So we are pushing. We've got lots and lots to do. And I'd just like to thank you all again and say have a brilliant time, and over to you. Thanks very much.
Just a moment while we safely retrieve the lectern. Don't watch them in case it's not working. Hello, everybody. I'm Mark from AbilityNet. There are lots and lots of seats down here, and you are going to be standing there for the next hour and a half. So please do come in. Please do sit down. And if you're online, welcome. You've joined us on the Perform Media platform. We've worked with them this year. That's an attempt to make the online experience as accessible and inclusive and engaging as it is in the room. There's about 150, 180, no, hang on, 200 now coming in today. And there's more than 1,000 people signed up online. So this is the 8th year, and we're doing something new. We're trying to bring in a new community, and we talk about TechShare Pro. One of the dangers of TechShare Pro, sort of patting ourselves on the back, is the thing it does best is it preaches to the choir. It brings the choir together. It brings the accessibility community together. We all know a lot of the why we're doing this is sort of intrinsic in a lot of the conversations we have. And we've always been trying to reach another choir. Here are some choir members who you're going to meet from a choir around brand and advertising, because as JC said, this is an important theme for brands and agencies who support them to get their heads around that. Brands want to be seen to be doing this sort of stuff, including disability in their brand profiles. But they're maybe a bit scared of that, and they're not quite sure about the best ways to go about it. I think that's probably some of the stuff that we'll come up with when we go through this initial panel is what's holding people back? What is it that the accessibility community, where we're all probably fairly familiar with these sorts of questions, can do to help another community? And how can that community connect with us and make more value out of the things that we're doing? So we chose brand, and then we particularly picked on advertising. One thing is you're going to see some advertisements today that we think get it right. So not in this session, but you'll be talking to Channel 4 next, and then later on Apple and Sony and Primark and others who've done some great work to try and inspire people who are in that creative business to see that this is possible and to see that other brands are doing it and draw people into that conversation. So part of today is like show and tell for us, that we really love this. We think this is great. We think you could do this in the brand and advertising work that you do. So this starts to bring us together. And then a final element from an accessibility point of view, that there's an important word I've learned along bringing this together this year, is authentic. Agencies, creatives, brands want to feel authentic. They can feel authentic in the way that somebody's represented in an advertisement, but that authenticity dies at the moment that the person that you're presenting it to can't see it or hear it or engage with it. So the content and the way that you communicate with your audience needs to be accessible. Otherwise, all that authenticity goes to nothing again. So for those of you who are in accessibility in the room, we're part of that jigsaw. We're helping make those brands deliver authentic representation. And then there's also the part about how disabled people are engaged within that process. And we know that the nothing about us without us is how you achieve that representation. So that's just teeing the day up. I'm going to introduce the panel, and we're going to talk about how those challenges come together and sort of set the scene for the day. And I'm going to start with Katie, because we've been working with Valuable 500 on this over this year to bring this event together. So Katie, please introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about Valuable 500 and where you sit with those sorts of questions that we've sort of raised there.
Of course. Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening to everybody online. My name is Katie Talikowska, and I'm the CEO of the Valuable 500. By way of a visual description, I am wearing a almost dressed like Mali, except it's a one-piece, and I think yours is a two-piece. So I'm wearing a one-piece navy jumpsuit, some heels, and I have shoulder-length light brown hair. I think actually it's probably worth sharing with you that I think today I'm almost wearing two hats, because prior to joining the Valuable 500, I worked in advertising and marketing, client service side for showing my age, which is 50 on Friday, 33 years working in advertising and marketing. And to use a slightly hackneyed expression, my disability journey, I think, started when I was overseeing the Maltesers account. And that was in 2016. I know we've got Channel 4 in the room. And we were lucky enough to win the inaugural Diversity in Advertising Award. And as a marketeer, when I found out about the competition, which was for the first time to authentically represent people with disabilities in their advertising, to be honest, I had a bit of a moment of reflection and a moment of reckoning. Because if somebody had said to me back in 2016, do you think you are a good human being? Do you think you are inclusive? Do you think that you want to make sure that no one is left behind? I would have categorically said yes. But I realized that I was part of the problem, because back in 2016, I'd done best part of 2 decades. But I had never worked on a campaign where, full disclosure, I had thought or had any conversations with anyone within the client team or the agency team about being truly representative and inclusive of the 1 in 5 of the global population who identify as living with a disability. So not only when Channel 4 launched the competition did I, with my brand growth hat on, think this is a really good opportunity for us to elevate our Maltesers advertising, which in truth wasn't doing particularly well at the time. It was a little bit average, same stories, same kind of protagonists. So I could see the opportunity, and of course there was the carrot of the £1 million worth of airtime. But actually I felt that I had a responsibility. And that for me was a massive unlock. And I suppose that really started my journey. So when Mark and I spoke at the beginning of the year about perhaps, having a day to sort of bring in a new audience of marketeers and brand champions, I thought that was really, really necessary. Because to echo what Mark was saying earlier, I think advertising agencies all too often, and it's good, but they're beginning to think about disability in front of the camera and perhaps behind the camera, but not thinking about the communications itself and is it fully accessible. And it is absolutely critical that we are authentically representative and bringing the voices of the disabled community throughout the entire, what I would call the sort of the go-to-market process. So again, in the spirit of, I would say, nothing without us, it really, really is critical. So I do want to say thank you to Mark, thank you to the panellists, Danny and Sam, who I've had the pleasure of working with before, and also HSBC. But I think we're set to have a fantastic day with really important conversations.
Great, thank you. So Danny, I'm going to speak to you. Tell us a bit about the work that you do and how that connects into this story in terms of change and
Sure. So, hi everyone. I've only been disabled for 2 years. So like 80% of people not born with disability, but over 80% aren't born with disability. So I know the kind of before and after. I've worked in advertising for 30 years, and in that time I've seen one other wheelchair, which is nuts. And I think there is a a widespread belief that disability means inability. So I'm determined to prove that wrong. So as well as my role as running an agency, I chair, we're called the All in Disability Group for the industry. In 2021, there was a survey by the Advertising Association, who are a trade body, into marginalised groups, so looking at age, ethnicity, gender, and disability. So I now chair a group, and we aim, like all the other groups, to get better representation, of which there are not many of us, and better experience. And I think, creative industries enjoyed neurodiversity for many years. They welcome neurodiversity with a different perspective. But in terms of physical disability, I think one wheelchair and 30 is maybe 5 physically disabled people. So I'm on a mission to change that. So I'm delighted to be here today.
Cool, thank you. Sam, you are the most recent recipient of the award that Katie tells us about. Can you tell us a bit about your work and how that comes together, and then equally what it is that the campaign that you've worked on?
Yeah, so I'm Sam Williams, Head of Strategy at AMB BBDO, one of London's, I think we like to describe ourselves as top advertising agencies. I was lucky enough to work with Katie in the past. For those who can't see me, I'm a white male, still clinging to the last years of my 30s, wearing black trousers and a white T-shirt. I think we talk a lot about AMB. Our role is kind of coming up with the big ideas that get real people to kind of fall in love with your brands and kind of build additional value back into your businesses. But I think the key part of that is real people, and through that we need to recognise the kind of beautiful kind of diversity of experiences and accessible needs that everyone has. Otherwise, you're missing out on a huge part of the community and the value that holds. I think the recent Channel 4 competition there's a notable shift, I guess, in kind of what that's asking for. It's always been in the past kind of leaning into that authentic representation of different communities. But what was really interesting about this year's brief to us was it's all about inclusive by design. So not only is it about authentic representation, but actually making sure that what you're saying and talking about is fully accessible to that audience. And I think for us, when we're talking to our clients and convincing them on the value of doing this work, I think sometimes there is a fear of, doing it wrong, getting the backlash from the community. But it's similar in my mind. I don't know how many of you know about the kind of green hushing, the fear of kind of doing sustainability work for being called out, which actually means that you don't address the important issues, you don't reflect different needs, you don't reflect the community, and that's actually more damaging to the cause. So it's really valuable to have this discussion, and really appreciate being here today.
Thank you. And you mentioned, Sam, about clients. So Hamish, you're here from HSBC, and I know this isn't your wheelhouse particularly, but certainly in terms of being the client and seeing here JC and Mali, clearly this is something you want to be able to deliver within your brand communications. And how does that work for you internally in terms of the changes that you're bringing in and the competitive advantage you're trying to get from that?
Yeah, so hello everyone. Hamish Goulding, I look after brand strategy at HSBC. First time I've done this, so I'm wearing blue trousers, a white shirt, and obviously halfway bald, so that's my visibility. I think, thinking about our competitive advantages, the sort of journey we've been on for the last 2 years, and I view this whole area as a massive thread within that. So that's the sort of bedrock of the foundations, as it were. If you can't access your brand, you're not going to grow your brand. And I think this notion that disability doesn't discriminate is fundamental. And I think my own personal story, my mother one day basically woke up partially sighted and had a rare thing called sarcoidosis, which sporadically affects you in various places, but for her it's her optic nerve. And so she couldn't see. So she had very much the sort of before and after. And I think if you think about her relationship with her iPad now, it helps her live. And the impact on that is fundamental. Now, she's one example. She's a very small percentage of a small percentage. But I think the power of our networks is that we can spot all those different individuals across the world. And actually, when you add those minorities, in inverted commas, up, actually it becomes a very large community. And I think if we can build and deploy from those insights and connect those communities, then we're truly living our brand, and we're truly going to create products and services that are much better. And yes, we can tell the story. I think that's by the by. But fundamentally, we need to get the brand experience right across touch points and make sure that's felt across the wheel, as it were.
And so just building on that bit, what sort of challenges to people outside the accessibility community, obviously within the brand, how do you see this as a challenge? What are the particular sort of changes you're having to make, and equally within that, the relationships with the agencies, I think, is interesting. This journey we were talking about through the year, some agencies say the brand's not asking, some brands are saying the agencies aren't helping us. There's obviously a gap there a little bit, but clearly you're coming in this and require your agencies to meet those challenges.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges and how do the agencies help you with them?
Well, it's very hard work, I think, as we'd all testify, and it's a relentless job, and it's the same through DEI, it's the same through sustainability, it's sort of recurrent themes across different threads or what have you. I think some of the work we do, and again, back to the sort of competitive advantage thing, is that the company we keep and the networks we keep means that you can have a scalable network effect of impact. That's not to say it's easy, but I think if we can work with our partners, then, we do various things like apprenticeship schemes, and apprentices are over there, who help us grow, help our partners grow. And actually those ripple effects across the world are measurably powerful. So it takes that kind of muscle memory to sort of develop to make sure that we all keep that front of mind and help create better product services.
And is that different as a brand strategist? Has it challenged you as a strategy sort of approach?
Yeah.
How has it shifted your perspective in terms of...
Well, it's like a whole different room has been opened up in your mind as to what accessibility can bring. So it's sort of stretching you into different areas. And I suppose the one thing I will say is that it's just brilliant to have something new to think about. And I think a few years ago, no one would sort of go near this. It was seen as not something that was positive or desirable. And actually, I think now it's giving you the way to talk in more truthful ways across things that affect many of us. So it's actually incredibly exciting way to build a brand because it gives you newness and differentiation that perhaps others can't compete. And obviously, from an HSBC perspective, we want to tell that story about the scale and the impact we can have that bring those communities together.
Can I just add to that, if that's okay? Because it's lovely to hear you talk about it being exciting and that sense of newness. Because I think all too often that there are a couple of things I would say. First of all, and I think if Jodie is in the room, thank you, Jodie, because Jodie spoke about at the beginning saying it's really, really important that people just start having the conversation and they aren't hamstrung by fear. Because the reality is around complexity and nuance of language, I think we all have to acknowledge that sometimes we may get it wrong. But as long as we are really clear with our intent and we seek to educate ourselves. So starting the conversation and learning, I think, is the most important thing. But also we've got to shift away from thinking that this is a tick box or a compliance issue. I think from a creative perspective, it's really exciting. You get the opportunity to learn. You get the opportunity to tell new, different stories. So to all the advertisers and the marketeers there, don't think, oh God, this is another onerous thing that I have to do to add on. It not only is it, and you're here today and we heard this morning very eloquently, all the phenomenal and really compelling statistics in terms of it being a driver of business growth, but also just from a creativity perspective, it's really exciting and it's a huge unlock. So I would really encourage people to sort of realize that this isn't just a nice to have or something that needs to be done. It's something that will bring new ideas, fresh reward, fresh thinking into the work that you do.
Katie, can I ask you a little bit about Valuable 500? Because one key element of your three strands is representation. So can you tell us a little bit about the research that you've done? Because there are resources now that are available that people can draw upon. But also broadly what the picture is. I mean, how bad is it? Or how good is it? Where's it good? That stuff.
Thank you. And you're ever so good, Mark. I should have said that at the beginning. Thank you for teeing me up. So we work with our now 529 companies, but we won't change our name to Valuable 529. It's not as natty. And also now 102 disability business experts, of which on the corporate side, HSBC is one and AbilityNet is another. And I think we talk about the power of synchronized collective action. And we have a three-pronged focus strategy working on inclusive leadership, inclusive reporting, and specifically, and I suppose pertinent for today, inclusive representation. And this time last year, we did a combination of qualitative and quantitative research, talking to disabled people across the globe. We partnered with Open Inclusion, brilliant, seek them out, Christine Hempel, if you don't know them. Open Inclusion to help us with the qualitative research, and the quantitative was with Yale. And the reality is the picture is still fairly stark. Over 90% of people with disabilities globally still feel that they are not authentically represented in the communications by the brands that they want to buy into. And as I said, I won't bandy around various statistics about growth levers, brand affinity, driving new stakeholder audiences, etc. But there is a clear business case. But I think in terms of our research, and again, our white paper was entitled, coming out of the research at Davos in January of this year, we launched a white paper on inclusive representation that shared some brilliant case studies from some of our other partners, Jaguar, Land Rover, Longcom, to name a couple. And we called that paper, again, the clarion cry of the disabled community, Nothing About Us Without Us, which, as we were saying, I think is now shifting to Nothing Without Us. But really simply put, and again, I do use the word simple because it just makes logical sense that if you want to sell more products and if you want to appeal to a wider audience, and importantly, not automatically siphon off at least 25% of your potential target market, you have to bring in the voices of the disabled community. And as I said at the beginning, you have to bring them in at every stage of the way. Again, when I was back in advertising and marketing a long time ago, we would tend to write an ad, and then at the end we would say, right, we're going to cast now. Shall we cast someone in a wheelchair? Shall we cast someone with a cane? Now, Channel 4, who I think are up next, have a brilliant model in terms of authentic disability representation. If you're not familiar with it, I would encourage you to seek it out. But there are so many different nuanced ways that you can represent people with disabilities. And again, that's something that came out of our research. And I think the key thing I would leave you with that we learned was when you are representing people with disabilities in your communications, please, as much as possible, avoid those two extreme tropes of either the superhuman to be celebrated or perhaps the victim to be pitied. We've heard people talk about minority groups. I don't think the disabled community is a minority group. The disabled community is us. It is a group that any of us can join at any time through age, through illness, through accident. We've got to stop thinking of disabled people as other. We have to think of them as all of us and appeal to all of us as opposed to a separate target market.
Great, thank you. Danny, in terms of your experience within the agency, and maybe tell us a little bit more about your role, what changes do you think either are being made or need to be made to match up to that ambition within the work that you're doing?
Good question. For me, the biggest hurdle we've got to get over is there's not enough disabled people in the industry. I think 11% of people in our industry are disabled or declare themselves disabled, but almost half of the disabled won't disclose at work because they fear it's going to limit their career progression. So there's enormous barriers to going, I'm disabled. Now, I can't avoid it having a wheelchair, but certainly neurodiversity people won't disclose. So I think we've got to normalise the conversation around disability to make people welcome and confident. I think you don't know what you don't know. So in my role as the chair of the disability group, I didn't know accessible websites was a thing. Now I know. I think people are scared of making mistakes because of the backlash. So we've got to welcome people in and make their experience when they're in easier, and almost don't fear disclosing your disability. It's actually got loads of value.
Yeah.
And I'm going to mention, because there's a few dots I've been joining, but the Ad Association, whether you mentioned the All In stuff, can you just tell a little bit about the programme? It's relatively new, I think. Because I think it's really just making sure everybody knows these things are happening as much as
I think it's education. So the first two things we did was to basically make the industry accessible. So we lobbied for accessible websites. I didn't know that was a thing. And for step-free access. This was 2021. By 2022, 105 agencies and media owners had ticked the box, wrong words, but said we do that. And now our mission is to, the point I made about making people less fearful of disclosing. We ask people coming to our building as a matter of course, have you got any access needs, access requirements? Now, I don't expect many people to say, yes, I have, but now everyone in my business knows the question. And that's our mission, to normalise that question. If it could be as well known as have you got any dietary restrictions, that'd be incredible. 20 years ago, people didn't know what that meant. Now it's ubiquitous. So our mission now, the campaign we'll launch shortly, is to go, have you got any access requirements, to normalise the conversation.
Cool, thank you. Sam, we were talking about how your conversations go with clients. So that, you're back on the agency side talking to brands. But do brands feel they need to be really brave to get engaged in this sort of conversation? Do you feel slightly nervous when you pitch that stuff to them? How does that where's that relationship come together best, do you think?
I think it's educating kind of our partners on the real value that this audience can bring to them. I think, as Casey was alluding to, like not talking in an accessible and inclusive way kind of excludes you from a huge part of the market. By not talking to this audience, you're losing out. I think Scope said it was £274 billion a year in terms of the, spending power of this audience. So kind of educating them on, the potential business unlock. But then having, again, really open conversations about being honest about what you don't know, being honest about where you are on that journey, and also kind of what we need to do to get there. I think, on our journey with Currys and the Channel 4 competition, it was really important for us not to just, authentically represent the community, but ensure that, why is Currys the right partner to tell this story? And so we went into them and talked to them a lot about, tech. As a big national retailer, you have the power to set the bar in terms of what inclusive shopping should feel like, but also kind of represent that in an authentic way, because tech has the power to improve all of our lives. It can cook for us, it can entertain us, it automates things for us. But the problems we saw with them was, the evolution of tech is actually making it less accessible for lots of people. Simple things like removing dials to make kind of sleek digital displays, or reliance on audio signals, excludes certain parts of the audience. So Currys' expertise, real people, real stores, that helps people deal with kind of the crisis of what we call unassisted selling online, gives them a real role to kind of talk to that community in an authentic way. So I think it's working out what your specific role as a brand, as a business is to help support that community, as well as kind of bring it to life in a authentically representative way.
Hamish, how easy is it to find people who can help you on the start of this journey? I'm wondering, because I'm thinking we're in a room full of accessibility people. Does it feel like they're separate? I don't quite know. I'm thinking about a closing rallying cry to come and join us. But I mean, does it feel like this is still a little bit separate? Are we starting to see this join together? Obviously, have Mali leading.
It does, in all honesty. And I think we're in the process of making a brand film around the area, and we've sort of Purple Goat come in and sort of be consultants, and that's a sort of to plug and play approach. And I think we need to think about how it's far more kind of, as Jonathan said, at source, building it from there. I think your point around us rather than them sort of struck a chord. And one area I kind of think is super important, and I'm looking at it through a sort of trust lens, but is around levity and wit and emotional connection. And I think it's very easy to kind of go down the worthy, borderline depressing route. And it doesn't need to be, because if it's about us rather than them, then it's all of us. And who here doesn't like to laugh, and who here doesn't like to smile? And I think the tighter we can build that emotional bond and take that elevated, levity of a perspective, then the better. So I think everyone kind of needs to course correct across the brand building, advertising sector. They obviously need to work with the appropriate specialists. But I think all of us need to think about it in a way that isn't at the expense of amusement, because I think that ultimately is not amusement for funny, but is that sense of levity is going to build trust, strengthen that bond, build the advocacy, and I think that's the area where brands can make a real difference. I think.
Can I build on that point slightly? I think one of the things that's really important for us to think about is how accessibility isn't a restriction. I think we've been on a long journey with creators where, the people see having to have an interpreter there as that's a restriction on what you can have in camera, or having to have audio description, that's a restriction on what you can actually say and do. But actually, what's really interesting is see them as additional kind of creative tools in the toolbox that you can actually bring to life, things that you can play with and actually make them into part of the drama so everyone feels included rather than an addition or a bolt-on to the work that you're already doing.
I'm pleased you mentioned that, because it's helping tee up the day, because there's the Cadbury's ad which does sign language where the steam comes over the captions. Yeah. I don't know if you know that one. That's really funny. There's the Cordana about Martina, Assume That I Can, which is funny and punchy. Yeah. And like you say, it's that emotional connection that's really the creative core of this. Within that, there's also some representation of visibility in a particular way. I think that's a really nice place to finish in some sense, because that's the crossover in the worlds that you're part of from an accessibility point of view. That's the currency, that's the language. Is there a final bit that the accessibility community could do more? Are we visible enough? Can we find ways into the connections? There's an Accessible Advertising Alliance. We're going to hear from them this afternoon. I didn't know about them until I started this journey. The Ad Association is another one. Valuable 500. But are we missing out on networks you think that we could be part of? Should we be looking for particular touch points? I don't know if anybody's got suggestions, but it feels to me this is the point to say, we want you to be part of what we're doing. This is where we could work with you. Any thoughts about that to leave people with a sense of joining up?
One thing I would be happy to share, and this isn't a gratuitous plug because it's free, but I want to say a massive thank you to Carney, and I think Neil is in the room because, and I promise I'm going to answer your question, Mark. I'm not just going off on a tangent. But Carney have piloted for us something we're calling ART, the Authentic Representation Tool. And it allows companies to assess where they are right now in terms of authentic storytelling and accessibility. And then coming out of the results of that survey, we are going to build personalized and customized roadmaps for organizations to find out what they need to do better and what they need to do more of. And as part of that, we will populate it with all the accessibility resources that are out there. So come and find me in a break and we can put that in. But I think it's a very fair question because we are all connected to that industry and we know some, but maybe not all of them. So I'm hopeful that through days like this and the power of the network, people can come forward and share because again, it almost goes back to what Danny was saying. You don't know what you don't know. And I think sometimes we've all been too guilty of being perhaps too polite and deferential. But we need to start getting a bit more shouty and a bit more joined up. But certainly we're at the Valuable 500 really keen to help companies with a very bespoke, personalised roadmap to be able to plug in all the different accessibility resources that are out there.
Cool.
I think there's also an element of giving it away. And some of the work that Mali and the team have done is sort of, the Volvo seatbelts, give away the patent and everyone benefits and raise the floor, as Jonathan mentioned. So how much can we be generous with the sort of expertise and the networks and the connections we have? Do we need to build something together that can kind of galvanize all these networks together and then open source it a bit? I think would be better for everyone.
I'd support that. I think agencies are very protective over their ideas and their work, very competitive. But now is the time to share and be generous and open.
Yeah, totally. I think we recognize, and I think when we talk to our clients, we recognize the limitations of our knowledge. Yeah. And I think it's only through partnering with other organisations, we partner really closely with Open Inclusion, who Katie mentioned before, because it's only through talking to other people, sharing resources, being open and vulnerable, I guess, in what you don't know and what you might feel are getting wrong, that we can actually kind of move things forward together.
Totally. And that sits at the heart of our synchronised collective action. If we're all addressing the same problem at the same time in the same way, that's when we're going to see proper systemic change.
Cool. We are exactly 1 minute over, so I'm going to draw us to it. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I think what we wanted to try and do today when we were talking about it, Katie, is we wanted to hear from people who we don't normally hear it from in TechShare Pro. All of the stuff you've been saying, all of the language you're using, all of the priorities you have within your day-to-day work, and we can dovetail very neatly. And I think it's important to see that as a starting point. I also love the fact you were talking about so many of the brands we're going to hear from, because the next session is Channel 4 talking about what they did on their set on the Paralympics over the summer. So, the beginning of that synchronization is today, and hopefully we could do more together in the future. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.